Anything you want to say about it?
Burnout. Jeez. It's like a kind of a sad topic, no?
Is that a sad tambourine? A sad
I
drum?
don't know. It's like a drum. It's like, oh, no.
That's not how I experienced my burnout, but
Mine was like that.
all right. Well, I wish I would have brought a drum, but you
I'm Puerto
actually
Rican. There's always music, you know?
there's there's a lot
Even
of
when
music.
we're sad, there's music.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Jeff,
Hi, I'm Elisa.
and we are Mr. and Mrs. RN. Thank you for joining us again for our wonderful podcast. We really appreciate all of you who are connecting with us. And as promised, this week we're going to be discussing a very important topic that is affecting, I want to say, pretty much nationwide, our wonderful profession of nursing, along with other healthcare professionals and team members as well. And that is the issue of burnout. And Elise and I really wanted to discuss and share our experience with it as well, and some of the things that helped us during our journey. Um, Anything you want to say about it?
Burnout. Jeez. It's like a kind of a sad topic, no?
Is that a sad tambourine? A sad
I
drum?
don't know. It's like a drum. It's like, oh, no.
That's not how I experienced my burnout, but
Mine was like that.
all right. Well, I wish I would have brought a drum, but you
I'm Puerto
actually
Rican. There's always music, you know?
there's there's a lot
Even
of
when
music.
we're sad, there's music.
That's not my people. My people do not celebrate like that. But that's okay. We're next time I'll bring the drum. You actually had an experience where you had a triple burnout.
I don't know why we're laughing about this.
It's a defense mechanism. So
There's music, there's laughter, and
there's
there's
healing,
there's sadness.
there's sadness. Well, so let's talk about it, right? So obviously we all just went through a very difficult time with COVID, right? And all of us, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what city you worked in, what small town you worked in, what state you worked in. We all experienced COVID in one way or another. And for those of us who worked in healthcare at that time, in whatever capacity, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for all of you who showed up. Thank you for all of you who were with us, not just physically, but in spirit and in thoughts and in prayers. Certainly was very much appreciated. So we had the unique opportunity of experiencing it in New York City and Manhattan, with two small kids and working full time in nursing and healthcare. And so we were there with you all as well. And prior to COVID, there were numerous times where burnout also reared its ugly head, right? And we've seen it. I saw it in my previous career from nursing. I was an EMT, and I would also see it in that field. In the EMS. So let's talk about it. I want to discuss our own experiences with it, how we managed it, what are some things that we have seen in our journey that we have identified that can contribute to it, and most importantly, what are some things that we can do to help us, through it.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Sure. Where do I start?
I don't know. You just laid out a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, you wrote down notes.
I did. So there's also like the contributing factors. I think that we have maybe talked about a lot between us, right? I think a lot of why we see a lot of burnout is definitely, right? You said the situational issues, right? COVID being one of them. The current healthcare situation being another one. That I want to talk about too. It's the individual contributing factors that lead us there, that led me there several times. I think that personally, not having a self-care routine can definitely lead to burnout.
For
I
sure.
think
Yeah.
that, you know, coming into being a nurse at 21 and not really, I don't think you really know who you are until at least 30, maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe even 40, I don't know. You know, you're really not understanding like how to balance the demands of work and like your personal life.
Hmm.
And I think that that balance is you know what everybody calls the work-life balance. And do you think, Jeff, that you have a work-life balance?
Do I think? Let me check my phone real quick. No. You know, I think for the long time I was searching for work-life balance, but most recently we had a conversation about how there's a different term that you have, not you created, but that you recently learned about. That you helped me discover that, you know, to explain more of what we should be, how we should be really bringing ourselves in the forefront of work and life, and it shouldn't be like divisive, like, oh, that's Jeff at work versus that's Jeff at home, you know, like it really shouldn't be a duality concept, but it really should be about being the most genuine person you can be with the values that you have and being consistent both at work and at home, right? I think that's what I understood from what our conversation was about.
Yeah. I mean, there was this concept that I know a lot of people were brought up with, like, you know, when you come into the hospital, you just leave everything at the door. Like that part of you ceases to exist, right? Like you stop being a mother, you stop being a sister, you stop being the person who's $20,000 in debt. Like,
Right,
how
you're
can you
like your
stop being?
troubles stop at the door, or rather that you shouldn't let your troubles influence your emotional your outward emotions, your communication, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly your work, right? Because a lot of times in that anxiety and that worry and that stress and that depression, you know, we're working with life and death, so it can impact the choices that you make. And so yes, you know, I've learned that too, right? It's like, hey, you know, your personal stuff stops, whatever's troubling you stops at the door. When you go at work, you switch it off and you switch on. I got to work here. I got to take care of patients. I have to do my best for them, and they come first. But more often than not, we see how that's really difficult to do, you know, because I mean, personally speaking, it's hard for me to stop thinking about life. So, like, if my children are sick, you know, I can't be at work and not think about my kids. Are they doing better? Are they feeling better? Are they going to get worse? Do I need to go back to the doctor? Do I need a new doctor? Do I need, you know? But that certainly doesn't impede me from doing my best. It's certainly still there, and so I find it really hard to find that like work-life balance, if you will. And it's also very difficult to really understand what does that really mean,
Mm-hmm.
right? What does that mean? Especially like someone in my position who is on call for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every other week. I still have to fulfill my responsibilities, right, to my employer. I have the capability to do so. I have the education to do so. I also have the willingness to do. I want to be that person that you call me at 5 in the morning to when something's happening. I really want to be there to help you. But then there's, you know, Jeff the dad, Jeff the husband, like being there with you, being there with our kids, and how we can balance that. And you know, again, going back to the burnout, right? It's things like that that I find. Yes, we need to focus on self care, because the other thing that I noticed, and I don't know if it's been your experience or not, but as I gone through in my profession, as I started till now, and I meet new nurses, you know, one of the wonderful conversations was like, you know, what got you into this profession of ours, you know? And more often than not, I hear some sort of story that revolves around either themselves being a patient at one particular time and being cared for by somebody, or that they had to care for a loved one, you know? And that either one of those two stories seems to be the predominant reason for which they decided to enter our profession.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I often wonder, like, it sounds like, you know, as someone who has experienced some sort of trauma before entering this profession,
Mm-hmm.
in knowing how my trauma impacted my profession, right? How does that impact them? How, is it without? Has it been resolved? Do we now see it more as yes, it was my influence or my influenced to become a nurse, but I've resolved that trauma, and now I'm here to take care of the next patient. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sort of have you close the loop, right?
Yeah. Or is it still something that is contributing to your current stress or to your current, inability to work-life balance?
Your resilience.
Your resilience, something like that. Because there's definitely a lot of things that we bring to the profession. But hearing this over and over again, I'm like, I wonder if this impacts us as a profession, if it impacts us being burnt out,
I think it's definitely one of the contributing factors is, I talked with a friend who's a holistic nurse, and she talks about how the nurse is the healing space, right? Right. So not the hospital, not the CAT scan, not the medications, right? But the nurse as part of like the healing space. So you entering the room or wherever it is that you work, your energy is that healing space. And I wonder, are we, I don't know. It's only been recently that when she made that comment, I was like, wow, like, if I'm the healing space, am I healed?
That's interesting. I've heard something similar, but what I've heard is more like, you can have a wonderful experience, from the moment you enter the hospital to the moment you're discharged. But it only takes one negative experience to ruin the whole positive experience, right? You can come in really, really sick and then leave really, really healthy or healthier than you came in, right? Which demonstrates, obviously, the fantastic care that you receive. But it takes that one interaction with one individual, right, that is negative, that can overcome and really cast a shadow over the rest of the experience. I've heard that. So I wonder if that has any kind of correlation to what you're saying of like, if we are the healing center, right, then are we healed? And if we're not, then what are we doing?
Right. I think that's really when you talk about like self-care, when you talk about burnout, when you talk about what are we bringing to that space, you need to ask that question, like, what am I bringing here? Right. And the expectation is that you leave everything at the door, right? Well, how are you doing that? What are you doing in your personal life that allows you that level of resilience to be there unencumbered, right? We're asking you to show up wherever you are, like unencumbered by your circumstances. But what are you doing outside of, what have you done before you became a nurse, and what are you continuing doing after to make sure that you are unencumbered, right? How are you integrating the different parts of yourself to bring a whole person here to then assist a person who's going through the most difficult time in their life, or a difficult time, or maybe you're not in, a lot of times we only talk about inpatient because that's the majority of our work, but
you've worked you've actually done like telephonic nursing, and you've worked, it's for all intents and purposes, in the outpatient world, but it's not just traditional outpatient world. So even in that space, you've experienced this
burnout.
I was gonna say connection with the patients,
right,
and their hardships.
Right, yeah. Even outside,
outside, right? Because we're not talking about like the ICUs and the ERs, which is people think, oh, that's so hard, but healthcare is bigger than ICU and the ER, right?
Right. Well, when you're touching people that are, even just speaking to people on the phone, and they're in in their home, and they're in a dire situation, it's even more, I think you feel even more helpless, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're really like, what can I do for this person who is in this really, really awful situation? So yeah, it's not just in, the acute care setting. Because nurses do work in all kinds of settings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, you said to me one time something that really still rings true to me. You said, and correct me if I'm messing it up, something about it's only in the battlefield and in healthcare where we can experience be in the presence of death, but then still be expected to continue to do the job.
Absolutely.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that really was interesting, right? Because in the battlefield, right, these soldiers, these heroes, they enter, they know they're trained for this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Part of their training as they enter the services is to mentally endure a lot of this trauma, a lot of this issues, a lot of what they see in order to continue to fulfill the mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't recall being trained like that in nursing school, right? Or outside of it because, I was fortunate to have that experience from EMS, where I would get a call and do my best. And if we lost a patient, we can maybe at that time debrief with the chaplain, but if not, eat something and then go back in service and then debrief later. But you're right. In the healthcare system, in the hospital system, like we experience this, and oftentimes we can debrief, right? What went well, what went wrong, what can we do better the next time, but we're really debriefing a lot on the processes. But beyond that, like I don't know. I you're right. Like what can we do? So let's
Like more on the like emotional state.
on the emotional state, right?
Well, like recently, I was at a conference where they said that there was like a certification for debriefing, or so there is more training that comes into it. It's not just like what went well, what could we do better, what went wrong.
Right.
Because maybe there is an emotional component, which is I think what we're discussing here.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
the emotional component of like let's say you did a code, everything went well, but how did you feel about that?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think is the opportunity that we have now in nursing or in healthcare is to really, and even what we're doing here is like, how do we feel about the work that has been done? I think that's the processing that we're doing, so that way we don't get to burnout again. Like that's part of this creative space that we want to create for each other. And for those of you out there, it's like, write in the comments, I felt horrible about this, or I felt great about it, right? I think that being heard, right, being seen for the work that we do, which is so, it's very hidden.
It is very hidden. It's interesting.
And I think people only want to hear all the wild stuff. Well, you must have seen everything crazy. And it's like, well, yeah, we've seen crazy things, but I've also felt horrible things.
Yeah.
Right? I've also felt crazy things.
That's true. Yeah.
I felt a lot of crazy things.
A lot.
A lot of crazy
lot.
things.
No, it's true. A lot. I mean, but again,
I think you really emphasize that a lot.
I was just agreeing. But yes, it's a lot. But one of the things that we wanted to share was, prior to us relocating from New York City and leaving New York City behind, where we're both from originally, while we were there, the things that we were doing that I thought helped debrief and thought helped bring us together, as we're entering this new space here, we're really realizing that didn't really contribute to relaxation or to a space where we can debrief, but it actually contributed more to the burnout. It contributed more to the lack of work-life balance, because oftentimes back in New York, we were in this hustle mindset, right? We were always trying to do huge things, right? That's just
big things.
And we did amazing things. We did amazing fun things.
And to God be the glory that we did.
Amen. Absolutely. However, all those things also, they were work, so often I joke and I'm saying, we're finally have our date night to the point where our kids, they're finally experiencing what that is, right? Because they're like,
what is this?
Didn't you just spend time with her last week? How many times do you have to go out by yourselves,
You're going out to dinner again?
But-
Where are you going?
But before this, it was interesting because we didn't really have like a date night. We didn't have a time for ourselves. We would go out, but it was always like work related, or when we volunteered and we were on a board together and we, created these amazing parties and galas and fundraisers, or we were invited to represent the organization at these amazing parties and galas and fundraisers. But it was still work, right? It wasn't a time where we can be like, oh, I'm looking forward. Like, it was still work. And, it's not until now that I'm like, you know, my I was just recently asked, like, what do you do for fun? And I couldn't answer it. I'm like, um, uh, why can't I answer it? You know, I
Mm.
couldn't find an answer to that. You know, and I've always admired people that they'll say things like, you know, I go hunting, or I go camping, or you know, I don't know, I do quilts, or or I go running every morning at 5 a.m. I'm always, to me, I find it so admirable. I'm like, that's amazing. I'm just gonna watch a show about that. You know, I'm gonna watch a show about camping. I'm gonna watch a show about hunting. I'm gonna watch a show because I didn't really realize it. It wasn't until now that I'm able to start really building these tools of what do I look forward to, which is great, and that's really what it comes down to is giving yourself that space to create things that you look forward to, because when you are stressed, when work is a lot, when life is a lot, one must have a space where we can go and be like, you know what? Yes, this is a lot, but I am looking forward to this weekend because I get to do this or I get to do that. I am looking forward to this. And that has taken us a long time. I mean, me particularly has taken me a long time to look forward to anything. Um, in that
A
space, a
long
long time in that space to be like, you know, I'm looking forward to, you know, how
14 years.
it more than that, but yes,
Maybe.
this is before you,
Maybe 41 years.
maybe 41 years. So, but you know, self care is so key. So, describe to me, what does that look like? Um, what does that look like? How what are things that we do?
Well, I think that you hit on a really great point, that it took us a long time to get here.
Yeah.
And congratulations to those of you who are listening that you're already there. You're like, I'm great, fantastic.
I admire you. I
Yes.
do. I do. I'm like, man,
We
I
need
want to.
more people like that.
We need more of you to come out and say, well, this is what I do, and I'm like, well, I want to do that too. How do I even start? You know,
Right.
because
But I think it first starts with a mental space. It's not an outward thing, right? Because you can go to the spa. People are like, oh, I go to spa, I get my hair done, I get my nails done. That's my self care. Um, you could still do all those things and still get burnt out. I think it starts with a mindset, right? Of like looking forward to things, of being able to build resilience, of like breathing in the space. I think a couple episodes we talked about like that you didn't want to breathe,
I did it.
and now you're breathing.
I am breathing much better.
In fact, I feel like I need to take a deep breath now because we were talking about such a stressful topic. So returning to the breath, and scheduling like things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we did that. We did go out, but we didn't schedule it. It wasn't a regular thing that we could depend on.
Right.
Now, you know, and I think it's going after that, right?
Yeah.
We went after that for many, many years. We actively sought it out. It didn't come to us, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't something that we just flipped the switch and then this happened. You know, we sought after God's plan for our lives, and that's, you know, what brought us to this space.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we also wanted to do it because we wanted to break the cycle, right? We didn't want to continue with our kids to say, well, you figure it out, you know. You know, like, yes, math is hard, you know, but we are, and we still continue to work in it, but our drive was to realize that we needed to make a change, and the change was internal, right? It wasn't external. It wasn't because we live in a better place, or we have a better job, or we have better. It's not about the external. It's about us. And like, no, we have to make a choice of what am I doing now to be able to feel better for myself, you know? And that's where it starts, right? It starts with a conversation. Like, we would have conversations about it, and I would tell them, like, this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling this way because of this. Because for a long time, I didn't even have the vocabulary to express emotions, right? You would call me Spock because I just found things either fascinating or logical, you know?
Right. Yeah. But it's going on that course. I think that, you know, it isn't the external. So oftentimes, we talked about education the last episode, but we also we relocated to a new environment. But what we realized is that you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still from the Bronx. You're still from Queens. Doesn't matter that we live in Frisco, Texas. Um, you know, and there's certain things that we have to come to peace with
Yeah.
that came with us along the way, right? So even though we have the house, the 2 cars, the career, everything, to God be the glory, in intact and health intact, mentally, there was a lot of things that we brought with us
Absolutely.
along the journey that had to be reconciled in that moment and still do, right? There's still things that come up like being hyper alert, not breathing in the moment, freaking out, right? All those things from, all of the experiences that are inevitably here,
Yeah.
right? Things that we have seen, again, things that we have experienced. But it's really working through that and being present in that space.
Yeah.
That's where the work lies. Because you don't want to be that nurse, like, I've seen things. You can't talk to me because I've seen too much,
Bad things. Or things you wouldn't imagine. Right. No, you don't want to, and I think that, again, to discuss this is to come to some type of resolution, right? It's like, I feel like we need to discuss this because we're all going through it in one way or another, or we've gone through it in one way or another, and people continue to go through it. And I think it's in the telling of our story, as a unit, as a profession, as a group, that we can all learn from each other. That's our hope here. Part of the reason why we wanted to do this podcast was also, I told Elise, I said, we have these amazing conversations. We've often been part of, we've invited people into our conversations that we have, and everybody's like, oh, you guys should really talk about this on the podcast. And I'm like, no, it's okay. We're happy here. But we realized that we were very insular. We realized that we were also we felt very protected. We felt very secure. We felt very safe. Stepping out into this space of having this exposure, this transparency, we're out there as a married couple, and to talk about what we're going through, what we've gone through, how we continue to manage, or how we have excelled, and so on and so on. Like, that takes a lot of, for me personally, that takes a lot of humility. That takes a lot of vulnerability, But it's in that humility and vulnerability that I personally am able to heal, and I'm personally able to grow, because a lot of us, like, I'll keep it on the self 100%. Like, I've always kept things very deep, very inside, very compartmentalized. That's just how I learned to manage things from my time working and 911 in Manhattan and responding to crazy things, right?
Mm-hmm.
To my time at the bedside in such a high acuity setting with babies and small children, and so I want to heal from that, right? I want to be able to grow from that. So what's the next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's in that discomfort that we need to step into that allows us to grow. And that's really what I told her. I was like, I enjoy having these conversations with you. I enjoy learning from each other, really having these deep conversations, especially when it's uninterrupted, right? Because our kids would normally come in and be like, what's for lunch? And I want to watch Heartland. I'm like, you just saw the episode already. Well, I want to watch it again. And I was like, I was just having the conversation. I'm like, I guess I'm going to put in the chicken nuggets, but to be able to have the space where we can come together and share, that's one of the ways that personally I am seeking work-life balance, seeking a way to prevent burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
Because there's one thing that I truly believe in, and that's stewardship. It's that I have been blessed with the role that I have, and therefore I need to be responsible for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to be accountable to it. But if I don't take care of myself, it would be nearly impossible to continue to work towards caring for my team and others and my patients and so on and so on, And so it begins with me, And so that's why I get so excited every time we do this podcast, because even though you're all out there, I still sense you all, and I still feel connected with you all in that sense. I'm like, oh man, this is great. Like we're not alone, and we've been privy to a lot of wonderful conversations with colleagues in healthcare that work beyond nursing and different disciplines. And these are things that we talked about. These are things that we explored together. These are things that we always plan together. We were like, what do we do? What can we do to make things better?
Yeah, and I think talking about it is really, it's the step along the way to get there. Yeah.
What else did you write down for your notes?
For my notes, self-care. And we talked a little bit about that. That it's more than just the outside, that it's an interior process. And that's really where the work lies. I think, that this unfortunately has happened to me many times, burnout. But I think this last time, I had a colleague of ours who really helped me through this process of coming out of burnout. And, if there's anybody out there listening to this now that is burnt out, that doesn't want to show up for work, that can barely put their scrubs on, that, has the Sunday scaries, or the everyday scaries, we see you,
Yeah.
And take that time for yourself and find out what led you to that space, because everybody's story is different. My story was definitely of coming into this profession and not being a whole person, right? So coming in and wanting to care for others, but I really truly didn't know how to care for myself. I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know what made me happy, what didn't make me happy. What things I found fun.
People pleasing.
Right? So all of those things, I think, led to burnout several times. So for you, that could be some of your story, and really take that time. My mentor, he had me do a SWOT analysis as to how I got to that point. And honestly, I had done SWOT analysis in my master's degree, so I was familiar. If you are not familiar, definitely look it up, because do you know what it stands for? I think situation.
No, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
I was thinking S-bar, S-bar Q.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Yes. So I had done that.
I remember that similar to you, I also came into the profession of nursing from EMS, and then that in itself also, with the inability to, because I entered it way young, at a young age, so I didn't have the knowledge of how to care for myself after seeing these traumatic things in the field and being part of these traumatic events that occurred, that it just, the adrenaline fizzles out. In the moment, you feel invincible. You feel like, oh, this is great. We're all rocking. I remember I had this one paramedic. He would say, you shined out there, and I was like, yeah, I did. I shined out there, and he wouldn't say that often. So when he would say it, that was like a medal. I think he said it twice to me, but I felt like I shined out there, but.
Like a star,
but I still, burnt out from EMS, and then going into a profession where I was like, what? All right, and then choosing a specialty that is highly stressful. Again, not being able to know how to care for yourself, and then it just continues, right? It continues, and then, I had to ask myself, like, what am I doing here? How am I going to care for others when I can't care for myself? What am I doing wrong? How can I be better?
What was the point that really was a turning point for you? Because that was pretty recent, let me tell you. Mine was about 2 years ago.
Well, I think in terms of what? In terms of like
the self-care, right? That you're taking these major steps.
Well, I think I just came to a realization that There's all this stuff that I was trying to do for my future, you know? I was trying to, invest in my future and save for my future and do this for my future and set this for my future. Future, 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 future. And then I was like, what am I doing in my present? I'm not doing nothing for my present. And I'm trying to focus on the future, but I never focus on the present. And I was like, how do I know I'm going to reach the future if I don't take care of myself in the present? And that's where, you know, working, in with my background, I seen a lot of patients pass in various ages. I know that life is such a gift and so precious, but it's also very fragile. And so, again, through self-reflection, through prayer, through just meditation, I was like, what am I doing here? I'm constantly focusing on the future, and I don't even know if I'll get there. I need to focus on the now. And that's where I started making little changes where instead of investing in my future, I was investing in myself now. So whether that's my physical health, my mental health, um, our marriage, the health of our marriage, the health of our parenthood, you know, I started redirecting that investment into all of this because I realized that I can't think about the future and I can't fix the future. One, because we don't know if it's guaranteed to us, right? We know that, but we also need to get there, and we can't get there without health, right? Right, in nursing we believe in the biopsychosocial spiritual model, right? So none of that I was pouring into, none of it, and that's when I was like, no, I need to change the way I'm thinking and start focusing on that. And that's when I became a little bit more pressing to be present. And for me, in the short time that I've done it, I feel better. I feel better emotionally. I feel better physically. I feel better, mentally, like spiritually. So for me, I'm looking forward to continuing this because now I'm looking forward to things 2 days, 3 days, a week out. Where before I was looking forward to things 10 years, 15, 25 years out. And that to me was normal, right? Because that's how I was taught. It was like, oh no, you focus on your future, you set yourself up, you get yourself a good nest egg. You'll see one day, you'll look back and you'll be like, that's what it was all for. But now I'm like, I want to be here now with my kids. I want to be here now with my wife. I want to be here now for myself, and it was hard to do so without investing in yourself in the present. So that's how I came to a realization of the self-care and I started exploring different things.
Yeah, it's a really good. So you changed your mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it all comes down to that, right? Changing that mindset.
Absolutely. I think that's the key. You have to look at things in a different way and question it. Like, is this working? What is this doing for me? How is this making me better? How is this getting me healthier? How is this pouring into me? How is this making my marriage better? How is this making my fatherhood better? How is this, and you start thinking about this, because inevitably burnout creeps in,
Mm-hmm.
And people say, oh, I'm burned out from my job. But just like you can't turn your personal problems at the work and then begin your work self, you can also turn off your work at home and then become your home self. That burnout will come into your marriage. That burnout will come into your parenting. That burnout will come into your personal life.
It'll go everywhere.
It'll go
to
everywhere.
your spa appointment. It'll go to your whatever it is that you're doing outside.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I really, as you were talking about that, I was like, there was this thing on Instagram. I don't know when it was, if it was during the pandemic, and they were like, no one's coming. No one's coming to pick up the weights for you. No one's coming to take you to the gym. No one's coming to prepare a healthy meal for you. No one's coming, right? You are the one that is going to have to do it. You're the one that's going to have to change this up here, right? It's not going to be, unfortunately, we get to be the heroes, right? As nurses, we get, especially like inpatient setting, or even those of you who are out there are heroes going into people's homes, right? You guys are the true heroes too, because you're the unsung ones, changing people's wounds in the field, doing that psych nursing out there, But we get to go in, provide a service that helps, and we get to leave, right? So we get to put on that care on other people, right? And what I like to say, like, we get to be the hands and feet like of Jesus, right? So we get to go and provide that. But for us, right, we have to be that healing part for us, right? So we have to change whatever mindsets that are not serving us, right? So in your case, you had to be like, hey, I can't think 10 years out. I've got to think right now.
Yeah.
I have to change that aspect. And I think that for me, like during the pandemic, I realized I was like, you know what? Like I could sit here and like eat Cheetos and like freak out and drink a whole bunch of wine and right and just like the world is gonna be over. But instead I worked out every single day. I fasted. I sought God. I enhanced my spiritual because that was where my avenue needed to be to get me through such a hard time.
Right.
Right. And now even the wider, right? So looking back to why did I come here? Right? Why did I come to nursing? And then how is it, what am I going to do going forward? Like, is nursing just care of the sick, right? And then for me now, because of that experience that I had, I don't think personally, I don't think I'm going to provide care to the sick anymore, right? I think that my space is really helping nurses be their best self, right? So being that person to walk alongside and say, hey, like, you're going to get there. You're going to get to this next space. And just wait and see, like, what you're going to feel like when you go through that journey, when you change the mindset, when you set goals and you meet them, you're going to feel amazing.
Yeah. And, you know, that reminds me, too, like, you know, in our faith, we believe that we are here to live in a community. So you don't have to experience burnout by yourself. You know, we are here. You know, we are all here for all of you out there to say, well, I don't want to do this by myself. You know, I was fortunate to have her, you know, and I'm fortunate to continue to have her by my side. But, you know, for those of you out there, like, who are going through this, you don't need to go through it by yourself. We are there. You have friends, you have family, you have loved ones, you have colleagues, you have people that care. You know, and we found them. You know, we found them. They're really good friends of ours. They became mentors of ours. But you know, we just wanted to share our experience with Burnout in the hopes that if somebody out there is listening to this and is experiencing this phenomenon, that just know that there's hope, and just know that there's help. Just know that you're not alone, and that you know, we continue to work towards preventing burnout on ourselves, you know, because that's really where we're at right now. We're working to pour into ourselves in an effort to prevent this, because it's a real thing, you know, we've experienced it. And so it doesn't stop when it goes away. And then it becomes about how do you prevent it? How do you work towards preventing it to creep in? And that's where the self-care doesn't stop. It continues, you know?
Yeah, it's a continual work that you have to do for yourself. And it is work. It's not, you know, oh, it's so easy to go to spa. It's so easy to go on a walk. No, it's not. It's not easy to go on a walk when you had a really bad day.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy to go for a walk when you feel bad about yourself, you know, or, you know, it's not easy to just, you know, read a book when you're like, I really don't feel like reading a book. I really feel just like scrolling and or watching like 10 episodes of Netflix, right? It's gonna take work, just like going to work is gonna take work. But when you pour that back into yourself, when you read the book, when you go for a walk, when you go like for a jog, when you call up the friend, right? You're like, oh, I really don't want to talk about this. But when you do that, you are gonna pour back into yourself, so that way, slowly but surely, you will see that burnout go away when you do those things. But it does take work. You know, it takes showing up, and it takes consistency and saying like, I need to do this. You know, I realize like I have to work out 3 days a week. I don't want to, but it puts my mind in a right space. Right. The same thing with like fasting. I do intermittent fasting. Is it just for weight? Not really. It's really I'm not thinking about a bacon, egg, and cheese, then I am feeling a whole heck of a lot better, and I'm a lot more focused. I'm more calm. I'm more present, right? So there are so many other things, and it has to do with like weight. Obviously, the weight is a great thing, but it's not everything, right? So those are the things, and it takes work. Every day I wake up and I drink a glass of water and a black cup of coffee, right? But that's also me living out my faith, right? It says, like Jesus said, take up your cross, right, and follow me. You got to do the hard thing, right? Yeah. People like say, I read this book that said, like, eat the frog, right? So you wake up and you eat the frog. That means you do the hard thing first, right? So for me, now it's not hard anymore, but there are some days where I'm like, man, I could just go to Starbucks, and like have like a free $10 coffee, with like sugar and this and that.
That must be a venti. Is it a venti?
Yeah, it's I don't know, because I haven't had one in like 15 years. So it takes that, right? Yeah. So know that it takes that work, the same work that you're gonna put in a 12-hour shift. You need to put that work back into yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you start to address burnout. Is that it's gonna take that amount of work.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on this wonderful episode. I hope that some of you out there, we've been able to help and connect, and we look forward to your comments. So please just drop them below and let us know what else you guys would like to talk about, and certainly let us know what are your self-care skills, because we are always looking. I'm always looking for them. So please share, connect, subscribe. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Take care, guys.